Welcome to another episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 375. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me, usual cast of characters, Gail from NY Fights Community Digital News, Daniel from 4 Boxing News and the Inspire. What's going on, lady and gent?
Evening all, morning all, afternoon all, good day. The show's going to take some stamina.
Yeah. A lot to talk about, especially given what happened in Saudi Arabia, right? For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, however you want to put it, discussing all things boxing. Motto is when boxing is good, we'll talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information regarding the show, the site is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. Um, if you wish to email us, you can do so at p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site itself, you'll see links where to check out check us out on all social media platforms. The link to the YouTube channel, the link to the Facebook/Meta page, Twitter page, IG, Tumblr pages, links to where you can find us on all platforms, podcast platforms available, be it Anchor, be it Google Podcast, be it Apple Podcast, be it Spotify. Also links to where on the page you'll find links to where you can donate. Got a Cash Me PayPal donation link. Let donation be the best nation. If you got some spare change on hand, you would like to contribute to the show, it really help out the overall production behind the scenes. Um, Last but not least, link to Beachbody on Demand, BOD, Beachbody on Demand. We're still in the summer, getting closing in on the fall, but if you want to get your health and wellness game right, if you want to get your fitness goals going, get your fitness game up, please check out Beachbody on Demand. I strongly suggest you take advantage of the 14-day trial, and that is for 14 days. You get if you access the 14-day trial for that time period, you get free access to any and all available programs on Beachbody on Demand, right? Be it if you want to really challenge yourself, I suggest you check out 6 weeks of the work, or some of the old P90X Insanity's series, particularly P90X2, which is really, really good. If you consider yourself an athlete, 6 weeks of the work is really, really good as well. Other programs like Bar Blend, um, Morning Meltdown, T25, etc., etc. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, Beachbody on Demand got you covered. Please check out 10 Rounds, and that is a 6-week program of 3 days a week boxing based cardio, 2 days a week of weight training / resistance work. Or if you're just looking to pump iron, please check out Lift 4 or Lift More, which is coming later on this later on this year. Excuse me. Let's get things going. Recapping what happened last week and what we're going to do, because there were so many fights. It was a really, really fully loaded past weekend of action. I'm going to talk about the big fight, of course, and then we're going to split things up between Gail and Daniel, breaking down the other fights. But I'm going to you, Gail. Let's get to it. We all know the deal last weekend in Saudi Arabia, right? The rematch between Usyk and Joshua. For those who've been sleeping under a rock, they fought previously September 2021. Usyk, former undisputed cruiserweight champion, has moved up to heavyweight, defeated Joshua in Joshua's home country of England to capture the unified BA, BO, IBF straps. They fought again, and I will argue it was a little bit of a more entertaining fight in some aspects. Joshua was able to put some damage on Usyk, Gale, but overall, the defending champ I felt was in control throughout most of it. I had it 8-4 in rounds. I know others had it 9-3, 10-2. It was a split decision for Joshua. For Usyk. Let's break this down in two factors. One, the fight itself, and two, Joshua's actions once the decision was announced, but still has folks talking. Let's get to the fight itself, Gail. Did it go pretty much to script for you?
It did. I expected that we would see round 13 to start the fight, and we did. But it was round 13 through 24 amplified. Usyk was better and Joshua was better. Joshua put on a much better fight than he did the first time. He kept it closer. I agree with you. I found it entertaining. I found it dramatic, even though I did see Usyk handily winning the fight. Joshua did have his moment. We've all talked about it. Round 9, he rallied. He knew the fight was slipping through his fingers, and he put on that burst in the 9th round, and he was very successful. It proved that you can hit and hurt Usyk. It also proved that Usyk's powers of recovery and his determination were able to overcome that. And then came back with the best round of the fight for him. So that juxtaposition of Joshua having his best round and Usyk trumping him, if you will, with his own best round of the fight really shows you where they both are at the top of their respective professions in the heavyweight division. And yeah, that means that Joshua has lost twice to Usyk. Well, he's lost to what we can argue right now with the inactivity of Tyson Fury as the best guy in the division. And there are going to be a lot of people who want to put him at the top of the pound for pound list right now. I don't think Joshua should. I'm sure he's disappointed, and we all know he is, and that's a separate issue we'll discuss given his behavior after the fight. But I think when he looks back, reflects, and maybe gets good counsel from people around him, he'll look at that effort and recognize that he did improve. He's got a lot of skill. There are a lot of people who still want to see him in the ring. He just came up short again against that same guy. And sometimes a fighter simply has an opponent who's their kryptonite. I think that was it here.
To Gail's last point, Daniel, some fighters just have your number, right? We talked about it a lot last year when it came to Fury and Wilder, it was particularly in the aftermath of their trilogy. Okay, the general consensus is that it wouldn't matter how many times that they fought. Fury is just a better fighter. You get the same thought here, right? Joshua, he did fight a better fight strategically and otherwise. He put his best foot forward. The end of round 8 and throughout round 9, I think he puts Usyk in some serious distress. But Usyk really showed championship qualities in the way that he responded in the championship rounds 10, 11, 12. Upped his game, fought with a higher intensity. His conditioning is just something to behold. The way he pushed his work rate, raised it up even more in those last 3 rounds. And Joshua, he could do nothing. He could do nothing, right? So put that. So I think it's just a case of that. Your thoughts, your reaction to what you saw second time around.
Yeah, it's pretty much a extension of the first fight, where even though like the first couple of rounds, Joshua was being a bit more reactive to Usyk's movement, but just like a lot of Eastern European fighters, Ukrainian fighters, if you fought under Papachenko, then you know that it'll take probably first couple of rounds for you to assess, for you to adjust to what you're doing. That's what Usyk did. And took him about 2 or 3 rounds, but then he started getting looser. He started landing his up jab, landing his own body shots. One improvement that I did see from Joshua in this fight, and it was very, very much key in the 8th and 9th round, was he put a lot more focus on the body than what he did in the first fight. In the first fight, it looked like he was more trying to headhunt. In this fight, he focused more on the body, trying to limit Usyk's movement. But then you started noticing the mental breakdowns when it came to Joshua, unfortunately. When I forgot what round, I think it was the fifth, where you had a situation that Joshua landed a low punch right in the thigh. It started to show a little bit of the frustrations that we were going to talk about afterwards. And
on replay, it looked like more of a borderline shot. It landed right on the belt line, in my estimation.
Yeah. But it's still a low blow nonetheless. It still shows the frustration. And like I said, in the 8th and 9th round, Joshua was starting to do things that he needed to do to win, trying to make the fight dirty in a way. Not make it as much of a boxing match. You have to make it a fight. And he did that, even landed, I think, 1 or 2 hammer fists in the 8th, which I don't think he did receive an actual warning for. But then the 9th round kicked in. He landed the body shots. You could tell Usyk was hurt. And I think, unfortunately, at that point, Joshua thought, okay, he's just going to fall now. 10th round, he's not going to try to contact. And we saw what happened with Usyk in that 10th round. He turned on his motor and upped the work rate to the point where I think that finally took it out of Joshua. And that's probably, like I said, the rounds that Joshua needed to do to pull this off. Because let's keep in mind, he got one judge to somehow give him 7 rounds. I'm still trying to figure out which 7 rounds you can give him. But he had one judge do that. The other 2 judges saw the fight that we saw, gave the fight to Usyk, and it's just unfortunate continuation. It's unfortunately one of the issues that a fighter like Joshua's had, where you build a big, strong guy, but unfortunately you're very stationary. Your muscle mass does limit you a lot of what you can do as far as movement, which makes it very, very likely that a fighter that is smaller than you, but just a little bit more compact, but more mobile, and may have better footwork and knows the angles a little bit better, like most southpaws do, that'll be a kryptonite. And that's true. In this case, that showed in the fight. And luckily, like I said, we didn't see any major travesties in Saudi Arabia on Saturday.
Yeah, let's get to the thing that still has folks a buzz. The post fight, right? Let's focus on 2 points: Joshua's actions / comments, as well as the response from one Tyson Fury. Let's deal with Joshua first. After this decision was announced, he became visibly upset. Had 2 of Usyk's belts, threw him to the canvas, stormed out the ring, and eventually came back, grabbed the mic, kind of no kind of to it. Stole the moment from Usyk, right? And had a speech, if you want to call it that a lot of folks found bizarre. He was going all over the place, congratulating Usyk on one hand, clapping back against critics on the other hand, talking about the situation that Usyk is dealing with his countrymen over in the Ukraine and the ongoing war with Russia. Something we've never seen from Joshua. We've never seen him act that way in or out of the ring throughout his entire career. Gail, Daniel, simply put, what do you make of it? What do you think was the cause of it? Was it the earlier point about the realization that Usyk just has his number? The pressure that Eddie Hearn talked about at the post-fight, and let me mention that the post-fight press conference, Joshua broke down into tears. Eddie Hearn came to his defense. Just that whole episode after the fight and during the post-fight from AJ, Gail, Daniel, again, what do you make of it?
We've seen so many fighters win and realize their dreams. and they frequently will break down in tears, drop to their knees. I vividly remember Kell Brook bursting into tears when he beat Sean Porter, which was such an unexpected outcome. Very dramatic. And this was equally strong emotions coming out for Joshua at the opposite end of the spectrum. The disappointment, whatever personal humiliation he thought he was feeling, losing, overcame him, just like the tears of joy overcome a lot of fighters when they win. Unfortunately, it fueled some very disturbing, disappointing behavior, which, given his apology a few days later, I think he recognized, or the people around him got him to recognize. But in the moment, I think he was simply so overwhelmed. It just came rushing out in the actions of grabbing and throwing belts out of the ring, storming out of the ring, coming back, and this wild, meandering speech that I'm sure made sense to him at the time, but oh boy, it didn't hold up too well. And a lot of people are very upset about it, particularly the remarks about Ukraine and the cheering and so forth. I think that it's important to look through the prism of how emotional this sport is, how hard this sport is, and recognize it for what it is. We don't have to love it, but if Usyk's forgiven it, I'm willing to forgive it.
Sorry, I was on mute. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, this is the one I warned you about. A little bit of a reminder, folks. We do have private chats on Twitter, and I warned Mike and Gail that I may have to cut a Jim Cornette promo on AJ.
Wow.
I'm in an office right now, so there's not going to be any yelling. That being said, what the fuck was wrong with you, AJ? We get it. You lost. You did better than before. You did better than the last fight. You could take solace in that. But then not only go on the rant that you did, which pretty much just a rough translation of it is like, give a hand up for Usyk because he was not supposed to beat me. That's what AJ pretty much is trying to say as far as the size. And even said it to Vasyl Lomachenko, who was there. But like I said, constantly taking the Ukrainian flag away from him, trying to make himself the center of attention. Nah, just say, motherfucker, you lost. You lost, and now you've just become British Deontay Wilder in the fact that you're taking this loss and took it to the extreme. We all thought Deontay Wilder when he made all the excuses that he did when he lost to Fury, from the suit to Mark Brennan to everything. You're now that. You're now British Deontay Wilder as far as taking losses. And that's a shame, unfortunately, because Anthony Joshua has spent a good amount of his career, and Eddie Hearn has spent a good amount of Joshua's career building his image. Make him as much of a politician as you could. And as far as his demeanor, as far as his answers, as far as him not really trying to sway things back and forth, and you just happen to ruin it all in my promo. I know he apologized. I know Usyk accepted it, but it doesn't change the fact that it happened. You took a man's moment in the sun away, especially given the conditions that man came into the fight with. And you took it away because it looks like you really can't handle losing. Because now it makes you look at how he reacted when he lost to Andy Ruiz a little bit differently. Because now you realize he did the same thing. He lost. He got knocked out, and instead of making the situation about Andy Ruiz, he made it about himself. That's a bad look, and unfortunately, like he's still got a marketable name. He's still gonna be money fighting the UK. There's only 2 fights right now that you probably want to see AJ here with. It's either Fury or Wilder. And just looking at his demeanor now, I know there was always a debate back and forth in the UK about who would win. How can there be a debate now? We all know now at this stage that Fury would probably embarrass him boxing-wise. And that he could probably outbox Wilder, but if Wilder lands one right hand, he's done. It's just, that's the part that grates me the most about the whole thing. It's just the fact that you took a man's, you know what Usyk's dealing with, and you took his time in the sun away because you couldn't handle Usyk.
I get those who argue that Joshua was dealing with a lot of pressure, being kind of the face of British boxing and whatever, and the stuff that he's going through in his life. The pressure of having to be almost a perfect figure, if you will, quote unquote. To Daniel's point, a bit of a politician in a sense. But and shout out to previous guest on the show here, Bo, head of media relations for Three Kings Boxing. Shout out to the entire Three Kings Boxing crew. Go to threekingsboxing.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. I host a Three Kings Boxing Twitter space every Sunday at noon Eastern, right? And Bo made this counterpoint to that argument. Yes, Joshua was dealing with a lot of pressure, but contrasted with what Usyk is going through. Joshua is dealing with what others think about him in terms of holding on to some image and whatnot. Usyk just came off the battlefield, right? 3-4 months ago, he was in arms, part of a battalion in his home country, in the ongoing war. He talked about how that is still in his head, in his mind, in his spirit, even as he was preparing for this rematch. And he talked explicitly about that in the post-fight. So, yes, Joshua may be going through some things, but how does it compare with what Usyk is still going through? And that's the discipline. And so that mutes that argument, right? We kind of saw the melting, the unraveling of a fighter on camera in front of millions, right? That's what we witnessed in Joshua's actions, in his behavior, the throwing down of Usyk's belts, the storming out of the ring, coming back and saying what he said. And then when he eventually left the ring, he got into it with some elderly guy walking back to his dressing room, threatening him. So he came apart in front of the world. And I'm glad that he apologized. But the fact is, the bottom line is, this is not a good thing for him. This is a window into a certain weakness, into his personality. Shout out to Usyk for his apology. He didn't have to accept it. If we're really going to be honest here, he didn't. Given what he's going through, he could have brushed Joshua off and saying, "Forget what you said. I'm going through a lot more. Your words mean nothing to me." But yeah. In his apology, and I wrote about this for Three Kings, Joshua said he had to go into a dark place to prepare for this fight. It's apparent that he's still in that dark place, and he has to have a look. He has to look himself in the mirror and see what's going on with him, what caused that, and what can he do to lift himself up. Can he continue on? Yeah. Should he continue on? I think so. There are other good big fights on him for him, and he can still compete. He's still an elite level heavyweight, but there are some things exposed, not just from a style perspective, but from a personality and spirit perspective. The man is wounded. The man is wounded, and he's going to have to take some time off to reflect and to get to piece some things together, because that was troublesome in what we saw moments after the fight. There was that moment, Daniel and Gail, and there was also one Tyson Fury, who we talked about last week, him retiring, then he comes back, him unretiring, and he says he's coming back, he's going to stay retired. Well, in the aftermath of this rematch, he was certainly talking like a fighter who was revving to get back in the ring, right? Went on IG Live, on his IG stories, with a series of posts saying that he would whip Usyk and Joshua on the same night. Stories have come out today. Frank Warren and Bob Arum are suggesting that Usyk and that they want to make the fight that could happen as soon as December. Gail, on when we did the ladies show last, I think that was October, the week before Fury Wilder 3, I said then, I believe then that Fury was clear cut the best heavyweight in the division. Now I have to change. I have to change my mind here, right? Based off of Usyk. It's not just the style, the left-handed style, and the high level of skill. Gail, Joshua can still hit very hard. Outside of Wilder, it can be argued he's the next hardest puncher in the division, and Usyk withstood the shots, and the way that he came back, he has, like Lomachenko, like Bud Crawford, he has a live working computer of a boxing brain. The way he's able to things just like that without being told, and change the pattern and the narrative of a fight within a round or the very next round. That, with his high level conditioning, uh, if Fury and Usyk were to fight now, I would make that more of a 60-40, 50-50 fight. It could go either way, in my opinion. Thoughts on what Fury said post-fight, and now the word on the street that you're hearing, they could possibly fight as early as December this year.
Oh my God. Come on, folks. It's Fury being Fury. Aren't you used to him by now? This is exactly what we knew we were going to get out of him. Fury is still very much in the picture. Now, he's got a few more days to decide what he's going to do with the WBC belt. He must let them know whether he is willing to defend it or not. I believe by the 26th, which would be Friday. So we're going to find out this week a lot more about where this is all going. But there have been multiple reputable reports, all pointing in the same direction, that this will be a fight in the Middle East near the end of the year. And it's got to happen. There's no way Fury could walk away from this. There's no way that Usyk could walk away from this. And Usyk, at the end of his bout on Saturday, made his feelings about it crystal clear. It's either Fury or nothing. And in his case, there is nothing really left for Usyk. Nothing to prove. He holds all the other belts. He's won his fights at heavyweight definitively, just as he won his fights at cruiserweight definitively. And it's the fight to make. There's so much money involved. Because of that, sadly, I'd love to see this fight either in the UK or in Ukraine, but perhaps neutral ground in the Middle East does make sense, does produce the money that will take to make this happen. This is big time heavyweight prize fighting with the reputation of nations on the line, as high as the stakes get. I hate the infusion of Middle Eastern money into boxing because of what those nations are trying to accomplish in covering up their horrible human rights records with sport. In this case, it is going to necessitate that kind of money. And if they are in the Emirates versus Saudi Arabia, I think that's the best possible outcome. And no delay, getting it done by the end of the year. It's warp speed for boxing. So let's hope that all comes to pass. I think that we're going to hear a lot of noise from both sides. These are both men who don't shy away from saying what they think, speaking their minds, and I am all in on that part.
Joshua and Wilder Daniel was a fight that should have happened when both were undefeated, right? Politics and BS and personal nonsense between the two camps prevented it from happening. It would behoove Fury and Usyk to not let this opportunity slip by. Just like boxing fans and pundits and everybody who watches the sports, insist on Bud and Spence to fight later on this year. The same applies to Fury and Usyk. The time is right. The time is now. They need not let this moment pass them by.
Normally, in that sentiment, your argument, I agree. However, just as my pessimism that we're not going to see Spence Crawford this year creeps in, my pessimism towards Fury Usyk starts kicking in, because to me, Fury, what is coming afterward, that's just throwing salt on AJ's wound. He knows he can rile it up. He knows he's going to get the UK people riled up, his fellow Brits getting crazy. But we also know that deep down, he also knows he cannot beat Usyk. It's why up to now, he kept saying, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But if it throws salt on AJ, that's fine. I don't think we're going to see stuff I have, because the only two people that are saying like they're hopeful for are Bob and Frank. And unfortunately, it has to be an obscene amount of money to do so and to put it in with Eddie. And not to mention the fact that now then we're probably going to have to deal with a top rank DAZN pay-per-view combination. So understandably, that does raise the stakes, unfortunately. It does mean that Gail is right. It would have to go to the Middle East if you want to do a fair middle ground, because in the Ukraine, obviously, Usyk's going to be the favorite. There's almost no way that Fury would ever win that fight. In the UK, it'll be a uniting factor of it, because there'll be angry AJ fans mad that AJ lost, and Fury fans that'll be there. So obviously, there's going to be a sentiment there. And even if they try to have to fight here in the US, we probably, outside of probably Jerry World, we don't really have the amount in the areas that would garner not only the amount of people that you want to have this fight, but also the revenue that you would generate from this fight. So unfortunately, yeah, but if this ever happens, it's going to be in the Middle East. But my personal belief is we're not going to see it happen.
I will toss into your argument, Daniel, that we actually do have one venue that has not been used for boxing yet that could potentially generate that kind of revenue. And it's Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas.
But now we just have to depend that the Raiders still be really, really good
Yeah.
in
Well,
order for them to have the date.
For that kind of money, they can figure that out. Too much money involved for that not to happen. If they decide to try to put it in the United States, it's too much money. Reliance Stadium or anywhere else in the United, it would be fools to piss that bout away. But I have to agree with you, Gil, on this one. Given the dollars, given context here, dynamics of both men, this fight is going to happen in Middle East. It should happen in Europe because we're talking about two European fighters, but the cash rules in boxing. The money, economics demand that is going to happen in that location. Unfortunately, to a lot of folks, given the political human rights situation that's happening, particularly in Saudi Arabia. Let's move on to more fights on that card. I'm going to split things up. Going back to you on this one, Gail. On the undercard here, IBF heavyweight eliminator between Filip Hrgovich and Zhilei Zhang. And I must admit, this one surprised me, right? I didn't think that much of Zhilei Zhang in the lead up. His fight versus, I think it was Foster. He didn't look that good, but to his credit, man, he took the fight to Hrgovich from round one, put him down early in the fight, gave Hrgovich hell throughout that entire fight, was able to consistently land with power shots. Kudos to Hrgovich for responding in kind. One of the fights of the year, Hrgovich got the decision, but for those who want to argue that Zhang deserved the decision, I'm not going to push back up against it. That was the best fight of the weekend by far.
I would say it was the best fight of the card, certainly. And I'm like you, impressed as hell with Zhang. He put on the fight that we always hoped we'd see from him. But on the other side of the ring, here's Hrgovich, who found himself behind in the fight, just like Joshua found himself behind in his fight. The difference was Hrgovich fought his way back. And Hrgovich won those championship rounds to win the fight on a razor-thin margin. And I do think Zhang won, eked it out, barely by a round. But a draw or the outcome we did get, I'm not mad at it because it was that close a fight. That's a fight I don't think we'll ever see a rematch, but I sure wouldn't mind. And it gives both of them opportunities because Zhang did something that rarely happens in boxing, but does happen from time to time. His stock went up. Our opinions of him went up, even though he lost, right? Because we were talking about this before the show. We're both completely in agreement on this. Very impressive performance. You know, his clock is ticking. He's very close to, if not already, 40 years old. But you know what? He's got a few years left in him, at least. He doesn't appear to have as much mileage on the tires as we think. I'd like to see him in against some of those other just below top tier heavyweights to see what he can do. I welcome him back into the ring. Really didn't think I'd say that.
There was talk of Zhang fighting Derek Chisora. He chirped about it after the fight. I would love to see it, and if you were to force me to make a decision, I would make Zhang the favorite if he fights like he did against Hrgovich. Daniel,
we really think Chisora should be back in the ring again. Really? I guess we can't stop him, can we?
Put it in Macau, and put some good money on the table. It's a profitable fight.
I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
Daniel, they should fight again. I don't know if they will. Hrgovich should become better because he was tested in ways he has not been tested before. I would love to see it again. I don't think it'll happen because, quite frankly, I don't know if Hrgovich wants to go that through that kind of punishment, through that kind of difficulty again so soon. But overall, kudos to both men for producing a terrific scrap. I couldn't be more impressed, particularly with Zhang.
Yeah, this was for Zhang. This was a coming out party. He showed a lot of skill sets, patience in combinations, and he got ever so close to probably knocking Hrgovich out a few times because there were at least 3 instances where Hrgovich, after being hit, just kind of spaced out and just was randomly walking to a corner. Now, unfortunately, the main thing that failed Zhang in this case, and it probably is the main reason why he lost the fight in the cards, was his conditioning. You could tell from rounds 9 through 12 that he was tired, man. Each round, every single time you see him in between them, his breathing was very labored. You could tell it was very, very tiring from him. And like I said, it was close enough that it lost him the fight. Now, I definitely they have to find a way to run this back. They have to find a way to run this back because the only thing that left a bad taste in my mouth from this was the knockdown in the first round. Like, Zhang did score a knockdown, but he technically scored it off a rabbit punch. And I know that, yeah, the referee misses it in that front, but who knows? Maybe if he doesn't land that rabbit punch, maybe Hrgovich isn't as spaced out as he was during the fight. Maybe Hrgovich puts on a better performance. But other than that, you have to give props to Zhang. Like, it doesn't matter if you can have the rematch in the UK or if it's going to be like the fight with Del Boy. You could do Macau, hell. Even if you want to go full-blown propaganda, have it in Beijing or Shanghai. Because I don't think Del Boy will mind either way. He'll still be getting paid.
Right, because he seems to be fighting for the money at this point, strictly for the money. Last fight here, Gail. WBC eliminated 175 pounds. You had Callum Smith, former champion at 168, fighting a Frenchman by the name of Bauderlique. Callum Smith, he was the favorite coming in. He did what he had to do, stop him in 4 rounds. Given the opponent, he was very impressive, but I'm thinking here, how would he fare in a potential matchup against Berdybiev, who holds the BC IBF titles, or against Bivol, who's the BA champion? I'm like, okay, he got the win here, Smith, but do I see him beat any of those 2 champions?
Nah. He's now a bit in the same position Anthony Joshua is. He's not the peak elite of the division. You know, Joshua is sitting below Fury, Usyk. You might even argue Wilder. Callum Smith is sitting below Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol, at least. Do we want to see him in with somebody like Joe Smith? That level of opponent, or another sort of rising star in that division? Sure. He certainly earned it. He did exactly what he had to do. But when there's more incoming fire at him, it's going to be a bit of a different story.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Let's move on to some other fights here, Daniel. We know the situation with Adrian Broner. He was supposed to fight Omar Figueroa, dropped out due to mental issues, quote unquote. Figueroa instead fought Sergey Lipinets. Fight took place on Showtime, right? And Lipinets, who was set to fight on this card, not just beat Figueroa, but beat him up. My thoughts here in the aftermath. Yeah, Figueroa, it's time to hang up the gloves because he didn't look good in this fight at all. If he's going to continue on fighting in this manner, what's the point?
Oh, and this was ugly. this was ugly from the opening bell because you could tell like that even if he didn't have that 15-month layoff, I don't think if he fought sooner, you would have gotten a better performance out of Figueroa at this stage against somebody that stays ready like Lipinets does. And unfortunately, showed throughout the fight. He never was in it. It got to the point where it started getting scary. Luckily, his dad stopped the fight, stopped it on the corner. He did what he needed to do. And now, this is probably Omar's second or third retirement. Hopefully, this time it does stick though. And say what you will, like about Adrian Broner, like Gail made it a point last week in her article that in the minds of a lot of people, when you're that close, say mental health issues, it really just means you're not making the weight. If that's the case, if you're Adrian Broner, you must be kicking yourself right now.
Right?
Yeah, because Omar was there, served on a silver platter. Like I thought it was going to be more of a competitive fight before, but if that's the Omar Figueroa that's showing up against Broner, yeah, Broner would have had a field day on this. And would it have done enough to really repair his stock? No, not really. But it would have given Broner a victory against somebody that could call himself a former champion, former titleist. And when it comes to Figueroa, yeah, it's a tough road. His style of fighting, and like the signature fight for that is his fight with Arakawa in 2013. I think 2012 or 2013. That fight where he just let it go, defense be damned, that catches up with you. And it catches up with every fighter that has that style. Very, very few of them really come out of the sport with almost all of their senses. And unfortunately, like I said, this is going to be a situation where I'm hoping it doesn't go as bad as like how Brandon Rios went out, where you could tell the speech was getting a little bit slurred. You could tell that some of the lights were not exactly on anymore in the brain. Hopefully, Omar stays retired, just relax. You made good money. You can rest on your accomplishments. And luckily, the family does have Brandon as the next come up. So it was just ugly.
Ugly indeed. Also on this Showtime card, Gail, fight for the WBA, vacant WBA belt at 140 pounds. Albert Puello fighting Akhedov, right? And I've watched the replay of this. I still can't figure out who won. Puello got the decision, but I've heard just as many comments saying that they felt Akhedov won. Help me make up my mind here. Simply put, I can't call the winner of this even after watching the replay. Can you?
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't know if I'm much help. I do think Akhedov edged it, but damn, it was razor close. It was not a robbery to go Puello's way. But you got to feel for Akhedov because he's now gotten screwed out of arguably two fights that he thought he won. A lot of other people thought he won. I do think he won the fight against Mario Barrios on the undercard of Porter and Spence. That was a much more clear robbery than this one. But damn, his career would be completely different at this moment had he won both those fights. His paychecks, his venues, a completely different path. Instead, here he is with two losses after very good performances. He's becoming the Mauricio Herrera of 2022, and you got to feel bad for him. But on the other hand, between Puello and Garcia, you had two Dominican fighters prevail. which is a really big accomplishment for that country and for Dominican fighting, and nice to see. This is one of those cases where I almost wished for a draw. It would have been the fair result because it was that close.
Indeed, last fight on this card, Daniel. Gail kind of hinted at this result that came out to bear. Roger Gutierrez, defending WBA strap at 130 pounds, fought Hector Garcia. Garcia, the guy who beat Chris Colbert last time out, not just beat him, dominated him in an upset win. And Gail strongly suggested that Garcia was going to come in and pull out the win here. And he did that, won in equally dominant fashion here over Gutierrez. Was Gail ahead of us all along? Were we slipping on Garcia, or at least were folks slipping on Garcia, just judging his performance against Colbert as just a one-off?
I personally did miss the whole fight. I caught the highlights, but yeah. Gail, yeah, you found a diamond. You found your Jaime Munguia that I had a few years ago, where he's just under the radar, but he's gonna have a really, really good performance. And that's where Garcia had the highlights. He just was calm, he was poised, and he didn't really have much nervousness when the fight with Gutierrez, which is something that you definitely need in this type of weight class, because you're right at that point where score's there, 135, and then 130, then 135. There's still a good amount of people that are gonna have some fights there. So good on Garcia. I'm gonna I do have it on DVR, so I'm gonna make the effort now to watch the full fight, because there was a lot to catch up on Saturday.
I'll go to you, Gail. Since Daniel didn't see the fight, I'll go to you. Since you called it during last week's episode, what did you see that I and others did not?
This is a guy who's just so fundamentally sound, who's smart in the ring, and who was overlooked because of his victory against Chris Colbert. A lot of people looked at that fight and thought, well, Colbert must have had an off night, or Garcia got lucky, or there were a lot of excuses made because it was so surprising. And it is the tendency when the favorite loses to blame it on a bad performance by the favorite, or he was overrated. Sometimes that's not true. Sometimes it's that a Chris Colbert is performing as the Chris Colbert we expected to see, but we underrated his opponent that much. And that's what happened here. I thought Colbert performed very well. It's just that Garcia was that much better, to everybody's surprise. So I'm not surprised that we saw that version again of Garcia. If he's going to beat a Chris Colbert and it doesn't look like a fluke, I had every expectation we'd see exactly what we saw over the weekend. I'm very interested to see how matchmaking goes. I'm very high. If I was buying stock, I'd be all in on Garcia right now.
So yeah, congratulations. Tip my hat to you on this one, Gail. I'll go back to you, Daniel. I don't know if you saw this last fight we want to talk about before we get into a little bit of some news here. And that is Emmanuel Navarette, WBO champion at 126 pounds. He fought a guy by the name of Eduardo Baez. And even though Navarette got the win, 7th round stoppage, courtesy of a left hook to the body, Timothy Bradley raised some concerns about Navarette, mainly because of his bad out of the ring habits, due to lack of conditioning. Navarette admitted that making weight was tough for this fight. Boxing heads are full aware that the champ, let's just say, doesn't take care of himself from a nutrition aspect. He tends to think that he can get away eating whatever he wants, Bradley says that's going to eventually catch up to him. The only and to his point in this particular fight, Baez was doing a good job of boxing Navarette. The only thing that saved Navarette in this fight was really the power. Moving forward, Navarette is talking about possibly moving up to 130, fighting Shakur. I would advise his team, no, sir, don't do that. That's a grave mistake. Shakur will box the mess out of this guy. Is he eating his way out of his prime right now?
Sadly, yes, because this talk about a punch saving you. Because from the opening bell, Baez had the better understanding of the distance, countered a lot better because unfortunately Navarette was throwing a lot of arm punches and a lot of lunging punches because Baez was keeping the distance so much that it gave Baez enough time to counter, enough time to establish great position, great generalship. And it's a situation where, he made just one key mistake. He leaned forward a little bit in the sixth round, right as Navarette landed a left hook. And it wasn't even a left hook that lands normally like in the middle of the outside of the body. It was a left hook that landed on the inside of the body, where he normally landed, and had that delayed reaction. Jack Reese tried to give him as much as he could, but then that delayed reaction got worse. Wound up stopping the fight. But yeah, you got to be concerned a lot of times when it comes to Navarette, because it feeds into the narrative that one punch can change everything. And a couple of examples right off the top of my head. Mickey Bay was, remember we talked about last week, unfortunately, in one of the biggest laughing stocks last week. He was on his way to an easy decision victory against John Molina until John Molina landed one punch. And that forever altered his career. Mickey Bay, forever never the contender, just stayed a mid-carder and a club fighter throughout. And John Molina, that punch extended his career by years. Another example, the second fight with Deontay Wilder and Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz was winning that fight and winning it pretty handily based on skill set until Wilder finally landed in that seventh round, that right hand flush, and completely took out Ortiz. And now at this point, like, you could probably, because of his age, never call him a contender again. And it let Wilder continue on, ultimately leading to the fights with Fury. That's what happens. Unfortunately, one punch can change the situation, because if this fight probably would have went to the cards, unless Navarette got a real good second win, he probably would have won on the cards. But that didn't happen. But this should raise alarms for Navarette's team, because he looked lethargic. He didn't look as crisp. His punches weren't hitting his bat until that left hook to the body. And a lot of times, your body can outgrow a division naturally. Unfortunately, there's a lot of distance in this, like you mentioned, this case where he's eating himself out of the division. And that's not something that you can do, because it's been proven now. We have enough of a record now that featherweight, even though he has the work rate, featherweight does not really show off Navarette's strengths. And going at 130, it's not going to show it, particularly against Shakur at this stage. So I agree with you. Yeah, they should think a little bit more before saying we want to move up to 130. You still have a good time to make it at featherweight and improve on, because like I said, just one punch changed an entire night.
Let's hope. Let's hope this serves as a wake up call. It'll be a real shame because he has a chance. Look, he was dominant at 122, but it was largely a case of him overpowering guys. But as he gets older, his body starts to mature. He needs to shape himself up and be a professional through and through, in and out of the ring. Um, this should be. He hasn't lost yet, but to Bradley's point, he keeps on going on like this out of the ring in terms of how he takes care of himself or doesn't take care of himself. It's going to eventually catch up to him. Let's go on to some news here, Gail. Look, the story of Deontay Wilder. It's been talked about a lot the past week. Made his announcement he's returning to the ring, facing Robert Helenius, former sparring partner. I think Helenius is ranked number 2 by one of the sanctioning bodies, either the BA or the BC. I can't remember. But thoughts on the return of the Bomb Squad, Gail, and his choice of opponent?
I love the opponent. I love the return between these two. It's the right time. Wilder's had enough time to reconsider his career, where he wants to move forward. Robert Helenius, because of his 2 wins against Adam Konoski, has certainly earned this opportunity against Wilder. It's going to be 2 guys looking eye to eye to each other, which is always fun with these, sort of mega tall heavyweights. I like everything about it. I'm looking forward to it. It's exactly the right matchup for both. For Wilder, it's a bit of a rebuilding fight. And he would certainly, even despite his recent losses, would be the favorite. For Helenius, it's a step up. So they're both sort of on different sides of the staircase. One stepping up, the other hoping not to slide down. I like the matchmaking a lot. And it's within the PBC universe, so it's easy to do. It's the right fight at the right time between the right guys. I'm all in.
I go to you on that. To you, Daniel. A couple other fights that are in the works. This was announced last night at a press conference. This particular episode is being recorded on August the 23rd. On the 22nd, the night of the 22nd, the official announcement, the rematch between Haney and Kambosos is going to take place October 15th here in the United States, but it's going to be October 16th at the location of the actual fight, which is in Australia, Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne, I believe. They fought previously in June. Haney won to become undisputed champion. Look, he won in the fact, and he dominated the fight out, completely outboxed Kambosos. The question becomes, can Kambosos do anything to kind of flip the script here? Haney was so dominant in that first fight, Daniel. It's hard for me to envision Kambosos in such a short amount of time finding any answers to cope with the boxing skill of one Devin Haney.
Yeah, this eventually was always going to come out. This fight was always going to be in the back burner because there was a rematch clause in, like I said, in the fight. And for folks I know some folks are already bitching that, why is this fight in Australia? Haney's a champion. That's the reason why the rematch clause was put in. And at the time when they made the contract, they made sure that the rematch would be in Australia. So here we are again. As far as now, the fight itself, I don't, short of finding a way to knock Haney out, I don't see another really fight-altering result that Kambosos can do, because he would have to hope that Haney reacts to winning all the belts the same way that Teofimo did, which is it did let it go to his head a little bit, and it showed in their fight ultimately, which one that he won. Haney does not look like he has that type of characteristic that this will consume him in a way that's negative. I think he has a better circle around him, sorry, to keep him more aligned in that front. So I don't really see much of a change on it, but it should be a decent payday. Like I said, it's not a situation where Haney is unfamiliar. He knows what he needs to do. He knows how he needs to get to us. To get to Australia. The main only concern has to be is hopefully, like I said, nothing happens, no injury delays when it comes to this fight, because then it'll push it into 2023. But if the rematch is there, might as well get it over with.
And the winner of this fight, of this rematch, Gail, more than like is being lined up to potentially fight Vasyl Lomachenko, right? It's been announced now that Loma, we talked about in a previous episode, and he's deciding to get back into the ring. Last week it was announced that he's going to fight Jamaine Ortiz. Ortiz is the guy who put Jamel Herring in retirement earlier this summer. The fight is going to be October 29th. I can't remember the location right now. If you do, please say so. Decent comeback fight for Lomachenko. You wouldn't think they would put him in super tough. Jamaine Ortiz showed he's a guy with skill. He can handle himself in the ring. Is Loma the overwhelming favorite? Of course he is. But yeah, this is an opponent I'm not mad at.
I'm not mad at all. I really like the attitude of this whole cadre of Ukrainian, Eastern European fighters who get into the pro ranks often after long and very distinguished amateur careers. You know what? They don't want to waste time. They don't do tune-ups. They don't screw around. They just get down to business. And I can't help but think that when you have been in the position of having to go to war to defend your country, like Oleksandr Usyk and Vasyl Lomachenko, you know the value of time, and you know the value of seizing the moment while we're on the planet. They ain't wasting time with tune-ups. They're getting on with it. And good for him. I don't think we have a location for the fight. It wouldn't surprise me if it was either in Los Angeles or maybe even in Las Vegas. Lomachenko is training in Southern California. He's got a home there, so it'd be convenient. As I recall, the Ortiz Herring fight was in Las Vegas, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. And kind of a good general location to welcome Loma back into the ranks. And look forward to seeing what he looks like after his time away.
Yeah, and absolutely look for that fight to take place on ESPN. Again, October 29th, the return of Loma. Only one fight to talk about in terms of the preview. Given such a loaded week this past weekend, it's kind of understandable. This is going to be a light weekend, and that is on the 27th in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on ESPN. Pretty intriguing junior welterweight matchup between former champions Jose Pedraza and Richard Comey. I'll go to whoever wants to take up this fight. Daniel. Your thoughts on this fight? Comey brings the power. Pedraza is more of the boxer. So we got a clash in styles. I would make Pedraza the favorite here because of his ability to box, and he has better defense. But with Comey, if he's right, and if he lands, he can hurt just about anybody.
Yeah, I think somebody is going out with a bang in this fight. I'm not sure that it's going to be a Mexican-style brawl, but it could. But it could also be one of those one-hitter-quitter type of fights. I'm not quite sure what we're going to see with this matchup. This will not be, I feel very confident in saying, a tactical, careful fight. That ain't happening.
Yep, I completely agree. I completely agree because right now, thanks to Josh Taylor having to vacate a couple of belts to get that to make that rematch with Jake Catterall. It's a bit of a free-for-all right now at 140 pounds to put yourself in a position. And these two are going to buy themselves to put themselves in the position to probably get close to the WBO. We know what Comey does. Comey can last. Comey can hit. But at the same time, he can be outboxed. Now, Pedraza is better as far as a boxer, as far as a tactician, but it's not going to be the same level that Loma was when Loma fought Comey, and it just was just we saw what happened there. But for Pedraza, he does know that this is probably going to be his best shot at positioning himself to get close to either WBO belt or put yourself lined up for the WBC and the WBA. So it does have a fight to have certain meaning. It is going to have probably some pretty good moments. And I'll probably stick with the sniper on this one. I know Comey could land a good shot, but he's shown that he can be outboxed. So as long as Pedraza can avoid some of those shots and fights a little bit more of a tactical fight, you could see the sniper put himself positioned to be a champion again.
Absolutely, and I think we're going to start to shut down things on that note. If you like what you heard this evening, please make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, particularly that subscribe button. It'll help the overall algorithm of the show. Get us closer to being monetized. If you're checking out the show on podcast platforms, particularly ones like Apple Podcast, please make sure to leave a review. I promise I'm going to get some shows up. A 5-star review will get read on a future episode. 1.1 notes here about a particular episode. We do a Ladies Love Boxing series show every year. The latest installment of that series is coming. September. Fingers crossed in it and around the time of the all women's card over in the UK, headlined by Clarissa Shields, Savannah Marshall on the undercard. Of course, you got the junior lightweight unification bout between Michaela Mayer, Alicia Baumgardner. The plan is to have that episode focusing on that card specifically. More than likely, either the week before the fight, more than likely the week after the fight. That way, we can talk about that card and also preview Canelo Triple G3. So just keep note of that. Ladies Love Boxing. Next installment of that series is coming in September. I'm going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. Want to end the show with ladies first. Gail from NY Fights Communities Digital News, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to get in touch with you to discuss media, or for those who want to check you out occasionally on TMZ Live, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
You can always find me on Boxing Twitter, if you haven't already heard enough from me this week, at PR Pro San Diego, and of course in nyfights.com, where you'll see my work and that of our mighty team. So do check us out along with our friends over at Three Kings Boxing.
Indeed. I go to you, Daniel. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can find you.
All right, folks, you can find me on Twitter, Rawkers99, RAWKUZ99. Like I said, catch me on there. It's a pretty eventful week. The UD's coming back for the 20th season. Pat Riley already announced that the number 40 is going to be retired. And obviously, the big thing that happened yesterday was the return of Johnny Gargano. It's been a very eventful last few days for all the sports involved.
Absolutely. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me on Twitter, Brother JR, Brother JR76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, and fragrance on IG, you know what it is, Brother JRSC. For those who do follow me on IG, I do. In the past few months, I've been putting up fragrance stuff as well. For frag heads, gourmand season is coming since this is the end of summer. Um, Anyway, for those who want to, as I said before earlier in the show, for those who want to check out all things pound for pound boxing report, you can do so by checking out the site p4pboxingreport.com. Once again, if you wish to email us with comments, questions, suggestions, etc., you can do so p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. Again, on the site, links to find the show all over social media platforms, be it Facebook, be it YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, IG. Also, links to where to find the show on all podcast platforms. Um, Links to where you can donate. Cash Me and PayPal donation links. Links to Beachbody on Demand. Again, I can't say this enough. At the very least, take advantage of the free 14-day trial on BOD. Access to all Beachbody on Demand programs if you're looking to get your health and wellness game right. So take advantage of the 14-day trial. Um, and yeah, on the next episode, we will do a recap of Kome Pedraza. Also, a couple light week this coming weekend and the following weekend. So we will do a recap of Pedraza, Kome. Big Baby Anderson is also fighting on that undercard, so we may talk about him as well. I think Effie Ajagbo, Richard Torres are both fighting on the card, so we may dive into that card a little bit. And it's a world title fight, strawweight world title fight, uh, in Thailand as well. Pradapsi, WBC champion, the guy who beat Wan Yang Minio, and he's defending his belt as well. So we may talk about that. So yeah, a lot of boxing. I hope you enjoyed what you heard, particularly our discussion in regards of Usyk Joshua 2. For Gail from Communities Digital News in my fights. For Daniel of War Boxing News in the Inscriber. This has been episode 375 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.